Okay, the second session, as promised, of today, it's going to be more of a live demo than talk. And as I promised you earlier, there will be pictures of France and Paris in particular. So for those of you who's going to try to keep me stick to my promise. Okay, so things you cannot do before 7. Back to the talk before lunch. I was trying to tell you why did we choose OSGI and why OSGI is a good technology to build things like this. And I think I mentioned at some point in time that we reached the limit of portlets. So there was only so much we could do with portlets. This was a limitation on us, but it's also a limitation on you. I think it's like a widely recognized limitation. And people are starting to, in the environment in general, starting to look into other technologies to actually be able to do things that they could not do earlier or do it in a different way. So I picked a few examples of things that you could not do, or at least could not easily do with Liferay 6 and like any Liferay version before 7. Before we introduced OSGI. Anyone willing to take a guess what those are? Come on, let's play a little guessing game. Okay, no. Okay, let's start with the first one. You can finally get some rest. I mean, it's after lunch, right? So, it's time for rest. No, but that's not the rest I'm talking about. How many of you are familiar with REST services? Anyone heard of something like REST services? All right. Do you use REST services with Liferay? Anyone? One. Why not? Because it's a portal and does portlets, and you cannot easily do REST, right? Okay, so we do have something in Liferay. I think we had it since, I don't know, as far as I remember, version 4 maybe. That is, or maybe earlier even, that is called remote services. And every time people were asking for REST, we're like, oh yeah, sure, we do have remote services. Well, those are not really REST services. There's what is known as JSON WS services. So it's kind of like REST, but not a real REST. So what you can do if you really want to have a REST services. Okay. Oh, and I don't have an internet connection here, so I cannot. Wait. Liferay France. Oh, nice. Okay. So let me find the browser. So I've shown this many times, so you may be familiar with it. If not, you can try later on going to Liferay, the GitHub/Liferay and searching for Blade. And one of the things that you will find is a thing called Blade Samples. So this is a project we created. It was in a different place before. It was in Ray.js repo managed by Greg Emerson. I've contributed to it. A bunch of other people played with it over the time. But at the end of the day, it finally ended up in official Liferay repos. So Liferay Blade Samples is something that we try to provide to you to have an idea of how to write things. So most of the things that I will be showing you today come from this repo, actually my clone of it, because there were a few things that I needed to fix. So actually, if you go to if you really want to see the exact code that I'm showing you today, you need to go to the my repo and choose demo branch, and this is where a few minor fixes are, but mostly the same thing. So when one good thing about this is that you have a description, not only the code, but actually a description of the extension points down here. And for each extension point, you have the sample projects in Liferay Gradle, which is our extension to Gradle, BND tools, Gradle, or Maven. So no matter what your build tool, you can actually see how to do things. So let's find the REST in here. And this is how you can actually do a REST service in Liferay. I'll use Maven, because Maven is my kind of thing of choice. What you have here is a POM, standard thing for Maven, and what we'll be using is a standard. Can you see that, or I need to? How do you make things bigger in here? Oh, here you go. So Java standard web services, Java standard RESTful web services, this is what we're going to be using in here. OSGI component annotations, and obviously Liferay. That's pretty much it. Excuse me. Let's look at the BND. BND is the configuration file that allows us to use to tell what things of OSGI we want to use. And if you look into that, if you remember from my previous talk, what we have here is a required capability. So we're not saying now that we want a particular implementation of a REST server. What we want is something that fulfills the capability of serving REST services. And this is an OSGI contract with the following filter, that is Java JAX-RS version 2. So this is how you do things in OSGI these days, is basically saying, okay, if someone can serve Java RESTful web services in version 2, let the thing serve them. I don't care who that is. So you're not tied to particular implementation. Okay, so then what you need to do is write your RESTful service. And this is how it looks like. If you look at the import statements, basically what you have is a standard Liferay dependencies, Java util collections and stuff, a standard Java web services, and standard OSGI. So there is nothing fancy in here. You don't do anything Liferay specific. You just create a RESTful service like you would for any other platform. Obviously, to make sense in Liferay environment and OSGI environment, you need to register that as a OSGI component. That's where this annotation, that's why this annotation is here. And you provide a property that says that this is actually a JAX-RS application. And then you use a standard JAX-RS annotation path to actually provide where you want the service to be available. Okay. It extends a standard application from JAX-RS, and you only have one method that says get users. And what this method does is actually uses user local service to get the users and returns the list of it as a string. This is what it returns, plain text. And that's it, and it's available under the /list context. You also need to obviously reference the user local service, which is just another OSGI service like every other. So this is what you're going to get from a service registry. That's it. You're done. You just created a RESTful service for Liferay. And if you don't believe me, I can actually show you that. Okay, so this is my Liferay in here. Oh, it's almost clean, Liferay 7, GA1. Am I logged in? I guess I am not. Oh yeah, I am. Okay, so yeah, for now, nothing to see in here. Okay, so here is my Where it is. Liferay blade samples. Make that a little bit. Can you read it now? I guess you can. It would be nice if at least once someone answers when I ask something. Okay, Maven. And let's go to blade rest, which is what I was showing you in the browser. And just to show you the class that you're 100% sure I'm not playing jokes on you. Here it is. So it's the same thing. Okay, now I'm going to compile this. Okay, here you go. And copy that to Liferay's deploy folder. Obviously, you can automate things. I'm just trying to make it clear what I'm doing. That's not your normal deployment procedure. And you will see that Liferay at some point in time will say that it processes this jar file and that's it. Now, your RESTful service is deployed. The question is how you access it. Okay, let's go back to the browser. So what we said was that it's going to be on /blade users. So let's try that. Nope, it's not that. Anyone has any idea how to access that? Okay, now, if you don't know, then you'll never guess. And the reason for that is you need to provide, because Liferay is a portal, and it handles URLs as a front end. So pretty much anything that you write in here, okay, I had double slash, but it doesn't matter, actually. Everything that you write in there is supposed to be a page, a portal page. So if it's not a portal page, you need to explicitly tell Liferay that it is not a portal page. So if you remember from version 6.2 and before, we had a like /c or /something. Those are specific URLs that we've told the portal that those are not pages. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to tell Liferay that at some place we want to have our RESTful services exposed. How to do that? Okay, let's go to configuration in control panel, configuration, or where it is, system settings. And you'll see that we have quite some configuration items in here. Go to foundation. And our implementation, what we are using internally in Liferay to serve RESTful, and not RESTful, but in general web services, is CXF. And if you're not familiar with CXF, it's an Apache project. Come on, open. Okay. So first thing first, we need to go to the CSF configuration. Here it is. And we need to tell Liferay that at some point, at some URL, this is not going to be a page, but it's going to be handled by CXF. So to do this, we're going to create a configuration and say, we want to have a context path as /rest, and this is going to be everything where our REST endpoints will run. And you can provide some filters and required extensions and so forth. We'll keep it simple. We just created a /rest. So if I now go to localhost 8080/rest. Sorry. Okay, there is another tricky thing. Because everything that runs inside OSGI runs in its own context. Okay, the slash is the context of the app server, but if you have HTTP things running inside OSGI, they run in /o context. So you need a localhost 8080/o/rest. Okay, now we've hit the CXF service, and CXF says, cool, I'll serve that. The problem is, I don't know what to serve at that point. Okay, we can try to do blade rest, but it's going to say, well, there is no service, no such service found, because we didn't tell CXF what we want to serve. To do this, we need to configure one more thing, and go and find what is known as a REST extender, which is down here somewhere. So this is the part of CXF that is actually responsible for serving REST. And then we'll create another configuration for that thing. We'll say, okay, all our REST services will be here. Now, you can actually provide some filters. You can have multiple REST services or multiple REST applications and multiple access points. And in here, you can say, okay, under /REST will be those services that match this filter, and under some other URL will be others. So basically, this is how you want to do things. In a real-world scenario, here we'll keep them simple. Okay, so we just created a configuration for REST extender, and guess what's going to happen if I reload this URL? Probably it's not going to work, because this is the day where the old demo failed. Let's go back here. Blade rest. Oh, okay, obviously it will fail, because I didn't call anything. So this is blade users, first of all, not rest. That doesn't work as well, because I didn't call a method. I just called a REST application, and in REST, you actually need an application, and our method is actually list. So if you now go blade users list, it works. So yeah, we said that we want to have a text, plain text, so that's what we get. So we now have a RESTful service. Needless to say, you can convert that to serve JSON, XML. You can do get post. You can eventually hook Swagger and or JSON Docker. It can do whatever you want from here. This demo was just to show you that you can do now real RESTful services that actually have access to Liferay components. Okay, and the point of that is you could not have done this that easy in any Liferay version before 7. So this is what OSGI allows us to do. Okay, what else you think we can do in 7 that we couldn't do before? Filters. How many of you know? Okay, let's start this way. How many, hands up, how many knows that there is such thing like portlet filters? But keep your hands up. How many of you have ever used a portlet filter? Like write one? Really? What for? Portlet filter? This is a most useless functionality in portlet spec, I would claim. And the reason is, in the specs, you need to, according to the spec, where you put your filter, you put it in your web XML, you put it inside the application that contains your portlet. If that is the case, then why in the world you would put a functionality in a filter instead of putting it in your portlet? You bundle the whole thing together anyway. Now, filters only make sense if you get someone else's portlet in a sense of a Java class that you put inside your WAR file, and that is a compiled class that you cannot modify, and then you put a filter to modify the behavior. That is probably the only use case that portlet filters make sense, right? So I'm very surprised every time someone says that they use filters, and I'm curious to know all the use cases. But because we changed to OSGI, all of a sudden, filters now have a totally new meaning. Because filters now are OSGI services, and because they're services, they can be applied to a number of different portlets. Not your portlets, but other people's portlets, which provide some interesting functionality. Let's have a look. Here is an example, and I'll show you that in Eclipse this time. Or actually, because I didn't commit the latest changes. So here is a blade portlet filter example. Maven and BND stuff is pretty much the same. One of the things that you're interested in is this example render portlet filter. So this is what it is. Oops. Sorry. It's a component. Can you see that? Okay. It's a component, and it has a property which says to which filter, to which portlet we want to apply that filter. So in this particular case, we have a example portlet, and we apply a filter for this example portlet, which is a traditional case. We have a portlet and a filter in the same application, which is totally not interesting. But what is interesting is an example content filter, for example. So now this is a filter that you can apply to asset publisher and journal content portlet from Liferay. Now you may wonder why. Okay, let's see what it does. It creates a response buffer and gets the response and then replaces every occurrence of Liferay with highlighted word of Liferay. So now every time it sees the word Liferay in a web content, it's going to highlight it. And that would be anything displayed by web content display or asset publisher. So let's see how that works. I have a article somewhere here, hopefully. Let me quickly create a page. Call it content, one column, other page. Great. Have page content, and on this page, I'm going to add a content which I created earlier. Like this. Okay, it's a very simple content which says, welcome everyone to Liferay Symposium. Hopefully no typos, because I'm famous for making ridiculous typos. Okay, and this is, no matter how many times I reload the page, this is going to just display the way it is. Now, let's compile and install that filter. Which is going to be portlet filter here. And I'm just going to do Maven package. Then I'm going to copy that from target. Here you go. I just installed a portlet filter. I showed you the source code. It was literally like one configuration and some logic. Let's make sure it's installed. Okay, you do live demos, something's going to go wrong. Sorry? Okay, let's see. Maybe this is not going to work. I mean, at least something. Hey, it works. Okay, so now the word Liferay is highlighted, yeah. So now I can actually create a filter and apply a filter to somebody else's portlet, which actually makes a lot of sense if I want to filter stuff. And if you rethink about stuff that you were doing before with like GSP hooks, now you have a whole new means of doing those things. I'm not saying you should, I'm not saying replace GSP hooks with servlet filters, with portlet filters, but it's good to know that you can do things like that. What else? you think we can do that we couldn't do before? Friendly URLs. How many of you familiar with Liferay's friendly URLs? No one? Okay, a few people. Then that's not going to impress you too much. But basically, friendly URLs are a way to reduce the standard portlet URLs, which has a ridiculously long number of parameters. Okay? Yeah, those are pictures from Paris, I promise. Okay, so let's see how that works. Let me close these guys and go to the friendly URL thing. Okay, so this is pretty much the same thing. In friendly URLs, you need two things. You need a friendly URL class that you need to install as a service, and you need the mapping. So I'm in here. Let me show you the class first. So in here, I'm registering a component and basically saying that the routes XML file is in here. This is what defines how friendly URLs will be routed. And then I also say that this is going to apply to network utilities portlet. Okay, so now if I go to my Liferay again and add a network utilities portlet, not content, here it is, network utilities. It has two tabs, DNS lookup and whois. And if you look into the URL, this is how it looks like. It's ridiculously long. So I can try to reduce that. I would say it would be nice if I could do slash network utility slash whois and go to the whois tab. But it doesn't work because it does not recognize this friendly URL. And this is what I want to actually change. So I'm going to go and create a component. And this is, as you can see, the whole component is just one class that provides the friendly URL mapping and says where the routing is and which portlet it applies to. My routes are defined in here, basically says that /tabs1 will be applied to tabs1. That's it. That's my whole component. So let's go to portlet to friendly URLs in here. Build the thing. Successful. That's good to know. Target. Okay, I've just deployed a friendly URL bundle. It's going to take a second or two to be processed. It's ready. And let me try this. Okay. Maybe a little more time. Oh, okay. I need to put the portlet in on the page again. Forgot. Utilities. There is a reason for that, but I'll explain that some other time. Okay. It's not network utility. Network utility is. There you go. It now understands my my friendly URLs. Okay, so this is another thing that you couldn't do before. Before, if you wanted to apply a friendly URL to a third-party portlet, you would actually have to get that portlet, put a routing into it, or provide some other customizations, which were, well, maybe not that hard, but not that easy to do. Nothing impresses you so much, I have this feeling. So let's try to see the next thing, which is totally new. Well, maybe not totally new. Shell commands. This is something that comes with OSGI, and you can actually do that in 6.2 if you enable OSGI in 6.2. but it's very limited, and it's very limited because the Liferay's own services are not OSGI services in 6.2. So while we can do commands, they're not very useful in terms of getting stuff from Liferay. Okay, so let me show you how a command look like. So if you go to another demo project, which is Blade GoGo, which is here. The reason it's GoGo is because the shell, OSGI shell, is known as GoGo shell. Okay, so how do you create a GoGo shell command? Well, it's very complicated, as you may have guessed by now. That's the full source code of the command. Okay, let's look into it. So basically, you have a component, obviously, that you register. Well, now everything is an OSGI component. And for this component is of type object. So all commands are basically objects. And now you say that this object has two properties. OSGI command function, which is user count. This is what you will be calling on a command line. And also OSGI command scope, which is going to be Blade in this particular case. So essentially you're telling OSGI GoGo shell that you want to register a command that people can call from the shell. And this user count matches the name of the method that you want to call when you type something. And in this, we just get the system out and print the number of users, again, getting user local service, which is referenced in here. So OSGI is going to wire us together. That's it. That's the whole thing. I think I have this compiled already, so I'll just copy it and show you how to use it. Blade GoGo target. Hey, here you go. Let's copy it. Okay. Now processing GoGo. For those of you who don't know how to connect, never ever type exit here because you're going to shut down your Liferay. If you want to go inside Liferay's telnet, Liferay's shell, what you need to do is you need to telnet yourself to localhost 113.1.1. Obviously, this is configurable by Liferay configuration, and when you do this, you get in. You can do things like list bundles. You have a bunch of commands. So the last one that we deployed is Blade GoGo. So now you can do things like Blade list. No, what was it? User count. I keep forgetting. User count. Sorry. Okay, so now you can see we have a shell command that actually displays how many users we have in a system. Now, obviously, this is a very stupid example because you could have easier way to find out how many users are in the system. The purpose of it is to tell you that you can actually create commands, and I can actually say other things you can apply here, like grep whatever 2. Or say grep 1 and show you full. So you can pipeline commands, and all of a sudden things become a lot more powerful for you with a shell. That does not impress you, I guess. Okay, no. Yeah, I know. I mean, it took me a while to find nice examples, but I know you know all this stuff. Okay, do you know this one? Configuration properties. So, you know that we had a portal properties file in 6.2 and previous versions. Anyone willing to take a guess how many lines has Liferay portal properties? A hint. Goes in thousands. Really, it's huge. I don't even know. I was just challenging you. But now the thing is, we kind of switched from that. This file is still there. And it's still be used for particular purposes, but what we wanted to do is provide you with a way to configure particular things, particular features. Like if a feature is independent and can show up and go, then it makes no sense for its configuration to be like there forever. So you don't want to change your portal properties every time you deploy a plugin, but rather you want to have a configuration of a plugin that comes with the plugin itself or independently as well. So luckily, OSGI has a spec for that, which is called configuration admin. Surprise, surprise. And this is what we decided to use to do configuration. So let me show you how that works. There is another sample in here, which is blade configuration action. Okay, so this is much like what you know from configuration. There is a message portlet. Just created a portlet that displays a message. Nothing fancy in this portlet. There is a JSP page that basically here displays if it's configured, then uses some variables. If it's not, then just displays something. I'll show you how that works in a second. What is interesting in here in the portlet itself is do view basically forwards to the JSP pages. Now, look at the activate method. It has two annotations, at activate and at modified. This method will be called every time your component is activated, meaning providing configuration, or updated, meaning a new configuration for that component is provided. And every time a new configuration is provided, we use this thing called configurable util to get a message display configuration class, and that's pretty much it. So now you may wonder what this thing is all about. One more thing to actually pay attention to is that in here we have a configuration persistent ID. So, and this equals this long thing. So this is a configuration ID that the system will use to know which configuration configures that component. Okay, so now the class that you are curious about is this configuration thing. And if you look into it, it's not actually a class, it's an interface. It's an interface that says message display configuration, and it has this at meta annotations. Those comes from another spec of OSGI that is meta type. And basically we just specify that the type. We have three properties: color, font family, font color, and font size. The type is defined as a Java type, and we define them as not required. So now we have not only a key value configuration, but we actually now have typed properties, which we can validate. Moreover, we can generate interfaces for. So let's look into how that works. Configuration action, target. There you go. Okay, let me go now back here and add this portlet to the page. Oops. Because it's message portlet or something. Okay, it didn't work this time. I mean, it has to fail at some point in time. Okay, let's reload. And sample, oh, here it is, blade message. Okay, so it's a portlet, and it basically says message, font, color, size not configured, please configure. Now, not only that, if you go to now control panel, configuration, system settings, other, you will see here a message display configuration. This is the thing that comes from this very portlet. And based on that meta type, we were able to dynamically generate a UI. There is no, if you look in the source code, there is nothing, no JSP, nothing that designs this UI. It's dynamically generated based on the information types that we have for this configuration. And we can provide configuration in here and say, okay, the color will be red and the size will be 30 pixels, and save that configuration. Okay, and let's go back to our page. And here you go. which is configured the service. Okay, now you say, it's okay, but what you're saying is that every time I need to do configuration, I need to actually go in the UI and change things, and that's probably not what you're looking for. So, there is a solution for that too, and it's configuration files. Here I have a configuration file that, okay, you couldn't see the name because it's a text file, but this very long name in here, com, Liferay, blah, 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 ending with CFG at the end, is basically your configuration ID. And this is how the system will know what you are trying to configure. And you may realize that this is the exact same configuration ID we're using for this component. So if you look inside that file, it says okay, let's change it. It's going to be blue and 10. Okay, it's just a text file. So if you now go to here, this is the configuration file, and go to OSGI configs, you'll see we have already a few configuration files. So let's just copy this one in there and see what's going to happen. We'll just copy a text file at some point. Okay. Okay. Hey, here you go. I just created a configuration from a file, and now, if you have been using configuration in 6.2, I know what you're thinking. How do I know which one it is using? Is it the one from a database, or is it the one from a file? Right? People that have been with Liferay for a while, they know what I mean. Okay, let me show you which one it is using. You remember this one was blue and small. So let's go again quickly to configuration, system settings, other, message display. Hey, it's blue and 10. Okay, green, 35. Okay, let's go back here. Hey, it's green 35. Oh, what about our file? Let's see. It's green and 35. Okay, so now those are synced. Okay, so you don't have to worry anymore where the configuration comes from, whether it's the file or is it the database. Okay, final thing that I want to show you real quick, because we are almost out of time, is another thing that you couldn't do before with Liferay is to get rid of things that you don't want to. Okay, so let's say I'm not going to be using blogs or any social. I'm antisocial. I'm not going to use any social things. So I don't want to have this. If I go to collaboration, I have blogs, calendars, forums, and stuff like that. So I say I don't want to use those guys. What you could do in 6.2 is disable them, but they're still there. Okay. Now with 7, what you can do is you can go to modules folder and find those guys. And this is going to be somewhere in here. So blogs. I don't want blogs anymore. Actually, I'm not going to delete this. I'm just going to move them to some other place. This is going to be, boy, I'm scared sometimes how many Liferay installations I have on my machine. So okay, I want to get rid of blogs. I want to get rid of calendar. And I want to get rid of, what else? No, maybe leave dynamic data lists. Okay, never mind, forget, let's just get rid of those two. So if I go back here now, my Liferay is still working. I just deleted a bunch of jar files. My Liferay is still working. I can click on applications and go to collaboration, and you can see there is no blogs anymore. I totally remove a functionality that I don't need. Now, needless to say, if I copy those jar files back, the functionality will be back again and working. So you can now really strip your Liferay down to the minimum amount of functionality that you need to operate, which is something that you couldn't do at all before OSGI. Not to mention doing this live at running Liferay instance, right? So, anything else you want me to show you? Hope not, because this is the end of it. But there are other things, so explore, ask, try to figure out. The reason we changed the technology was not because it was fancy technology everyone around is talking about, but it really enables us to do things that we couldn't do before. Okay? So go ahead and explore it yourself, and wish you good luck with that. Thank you. I'm afraid we don't have any time for questions, but I'll be around, so just find me and ask if there is anything more you want to know. All right? Thank you.